So episode 52,
Yeah,
a whole year.
which a whole year.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing, yeah.
it is pretty good. We've been recording for a bit longer than that because it took us a while to
Mm.
publish our first one. But yes,
Yeah, and
we,
obviously we had with travel and that sort of thing, we had a few gaps in
yeah.
between.
No, but we've released
But
an episode every week for a
every
year.
week. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Correct.
So,
Yeah. Feels good. Feels
yeah,
good.
yeah. Um,
Hmm.
and we recently shifted to talking about good news because we seem to talk a lot about doom and gloom. But
Yes.
so I browsed through some of the good news sites. There were some interesting stories. So one of them was some scientific development of a sponge that can absorb oil and water. So for oil spills, like the sponge type of
Okay.
material that is able to absorb all the oil. It's an interesting one.
That's very interesting. When's the last time that we had a big oil spill?
Gosh, can't remember.
I want to say probably decades.
Okay,
I'm not.
so
I'm
why
not
they're
saying.
creating? Maybe it's
Look, I
taken
think
them
that.
decades to come up with the solution.
Yeah, maybe, but look, I'm not saying that there aren't enough, minor oil spills and just general waste and that sort of thing that
Yeah.
can't benefit from a technology like that. But just when you said, thought to myself, wow, it's been a long, long time since
So
that was
yeah, that's a good news
front
story
and
of
center,
itself.
yeah, of itself. Yes, yes.
I was going to ask you,
Uh,
but maybe it'll get negative. Was something interesting happened in South Africa last week, or in the past week? Um, the ruling party lost its outright majority of votes in the elections.
yes, you're 100% correct. It is something that going into the elections, there were obviously pundits that said that this is going to happen. I didn't really pay much attention to that or to the politics um, in general. Um, and then, obviously went and voted. Um, was pleasantly surprised by in in my area and in the voting station that I went to in terms of the turnout. It did transpire afterwards that it was the lowest overall percentage of the population that voted since 1994. So only
Okay.
58% of people voted. Now, I have also heard people who wanted to vote, but the updates to, they moved from one
Mm-hmm.
area to another, one town to another, and so on. And these things just never happened.
Yeah.
So they couldn't vote. I'm not sure if that will kind of get up there to in the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. However, the really surprising, and I think so far this is a really good news story for me, is the fact that the ruling party accepted the result and the fact that they lost that majority graciously.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that there's a whole lot of things being said behind the scenes, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
And we it kind of ushered in a new era for South Africa as a country
Yeah.
because we've never in the history of the country, as far as I'm aware, had to put together a coalition government. Okay, so um, exciting because hopefully there will be better oversight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm not really kind of holding my breath that things will dramatically change in the short to medium term.
Yeah.
I think what the the best case is that I think that we can hope for is that there is some kind of a sensible coalition structure put in place
Mm-hmm.
that will last and that will promote better governance.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like I thought about it this morning. You, if everything in your fridge is wilted and starting to rot and going bad, then putting two fresh apples in the fridge doesn't make everything okay again.
Yeah.
So, in other words, why I thought of that is the corruption has become so institutionalized
Mm-hmm.
on all levels. Whether it is a traffic cop trying to solicit a bribe for you exceeding the speed limit, or whether it is kind of on a slightly higher level, people having to just pay a little extra fee to get things done at the municipal office. I mean, and so it goes up and up and up and up. At every single level, corruption has become a source of income.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it doesn't, it's certainly the right thing is for right at the top to start changing there. But
Yeah.
you can imagine how long it's going to take and what an effort it is going to be to filter right down
Yeah.
to the level where ordinary citizens are affected on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Do you think some
Anyway,
ministers are going to be open to work on LinkedIn soon?
there's a lot of MPs. There's a lot of MPs from the ruling party.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly how that is going to kind of, I believe that all parties had to submit a list before the election and kind of in rank order. So, in other words, if if I was number 5 on the list of
Mm-hmm.
my party, but we only got 4 seats, then numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 will get the seats. Then I don't get a
Okay.
seat.
Okay.
So the same thing now with the ANC. I can't remember exactly what the numbers are, but there is, I believe, about 60 or so members of parliament that, quite a few of the older ANC stalwarts, as they were referred to,
Mm-hmm.
that have resigned or retired. And those are the more socialist or communist, or some of them were just flat out communist leaning. Anyway, so that in itself may be a good thing.
Yeah. It's
That we
really
have
interesting to
less.
see what happens
Yeah,
next.
yeah, correct. And I've now started to kind of pay a little bit of attention,
Mm-hmm.
and I watched a few experts talking about the different possibilities or the different scenarios. Because it's actually only a few that will make sense,
Mm-hmm.
that will that could kind of form a coalition, a workable coalition. And it's really opened my eyes to kind of some of the thinking or some of the things that must be considered when you kind of enter into a coalition like this, and what could be the outcomes of this. Um, I mean, so the ANC, the biggest party, then the Democratic Alliance, the second biggest party, then the newly formed Mkhonto Wesizwe
They
party.
did incredibly well for being a first time.
100%, yeah. That was really surprising.
Yeah.
And then obviously the fourth one is the EFF.
Mm-hmm.
Now both Mkhonto Sizwe and the EFF, have already said that they've got these demands,
Mm-hmm.
like typical Julius um, kind of demands. He wants I don't know, unlimited account at the Gucci store, and he wants, this absolutely unrealistic demands that they have, and kind of like similar with Mkhonto Sizwe.
Mm-hmm.
So um, there's a very, very low probability, I think,
Mm-hmm.
that they will actually form that. So it seems like people are saying that the DA and the IFP will, together with the ANC,
Mm-hmm.
form the best potential coalition.
Which is so interesting when you think about the fact that they've been kind of the rival parties for the longest time.
Correct,
Yeah.
But how it just reminds me how far we have drifted away from the purpose or the ideologies, the entire concept of democracy.
Mm-hmm.
So, in other words, it doesn't matter that these parties have been rivals for 30 years or whatever the case may be. The point is all politicians should have very, very similar objectives.
Yeah. It's for the
In
good
other
of the
words,
country.
it's for the
Yeah.
good of the country and it's for the good of the people of
Mm-hmm.
the country. And, you know, you see so much of this, we just want control. As a small group of people, we want control
Mm-hmm.
of X, Y, and Z. For example, MK wants the portfolio of energy. In other words, they want all the mines so that they can put somebody in place where the looting, etc., can just continue. Obviously, under energy is electricity supply and so on. So they come up with these demands, which is so completely, it is so far removed from
Yeah.
what their actual purpose should be in terms of engaging in a government.
Yeah. It's about control rather than service.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Look, and again, I look at it kind of like all these other countries, that are having elections this year. You kind of follow a little bit. The one that I did not know, or that I do not know anything about, is this lady that became the leader
Mexico.
of Mexico
Mm.
yesterday.
Yeah, I also don't know much about it. I just had heard that they had elected their first female president.
Yeah, which is also starting to become a little bit of a, why is that even necessary to make such a big thing of it?
Yeah. Can I tell you
It's
something?
like,
Yeah, something else interesting. No,
yes.
carry on. Carry on with that thought.
No, no, no. It's just I feel like haven't we progressed far enough, and haven't we had enough women in leadership positions that we don't really need that to be the first thing.
Doesn't need to be
I
the
still don't
headline.
know. Yeah, I still don't know what her policy is. Is she more moderate? Is she more capitalist? Is she more,
Yeah. All I know from the headlines is she's the first female president.
exactly. Yes.
I don't know
Anyway,
anything else about her. I know she has a Jewish
yes.
sounding name, which I thought was interesting.
Oh
I
my
don't know.
word. Is there a conspiracy theory lurking here behind? Was she appointed by the Illuminati?
Oh,
Is that where
speaking
you're
of,
going?
I got an email from the Illuminati inviting me to be a
Really?
member. Yeah, I mean, obviously not. It was a
Phenomenal.
spam email, but it came from the Illuminati. And it said, I'll tell you, I got it this morning.
Lucky you.
It said, hello, chosen ones of the light. You were chosen by the great brotherhood of the Illuminati to be a member of this family. You have found favor in the eyes of the great creator, and hence this noble invitation to be a member of the elite family. And it goes on. Something about also,
Wow.
I can reach the peak of my career as well as be given $2.7 million as my benefit, and also be given a new house of my choice. So
Really?
reply me by saying yes.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
$2.7 million. You wonder how they come up with that number.
I've done the calculations for my retirement. I need 64 million pounds, please.
So maybe you must reply and then say, listen, I've seriously considered, but I'm going to require a bit more than
2.7 million.
2.7.
Okay, so the other
Yeah.
thing about elections that surprised me
Yes.
recently, so this is kind of more like a fact sharing podcast than a good news podcast, but I just found this really interesting. The Indian elections, the
Yeah.
number of eligible people to vote was almost 1 billion, was 969 million people. And then they did this statistic on BBC about how much that is. So it's more than the population of the United States, Brazil, Russia, Japan, UK, Belgium, and France combined.
It is phenomenal.
So
It is
many people.
obviously the largest democratic voting nation in the world. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
I mean,
biggest.
imagine organizing something like that. Well, they've had to do it over several weeks, and they've had to tier it, and they had people dying of heat stroke waiting in queues. I heard on the news it was like one of their hottest weeks ever where they were voting, and
Yeah, it's look, and again, you have to ask yourself, okay, cool, did it does it really work for the average Indian person? I mean, the caste system is still very much arranged marriages, etc., etc., etc. All of these things which still in place. So how is this democracy benefiting? I don't know. Maybe I don't understand enough about the country and the culture, etc. But yeah, I'm just thinking it's since I became a democratic country,
Mhm.
you haven't really seen them kind of make all these phenomenal strides toward growing a middle class. And maybe I'm wrong. I could
Yeah,
be wrong, but
I don't know enough about
anyway,
it myself.
yeah. But that's a hell of a lot of people.
Yeah, those were just eligible voters, so I don't know how
Yeah,
how do they calculate that? Just people between the ages of whatever.
correct. Yeah, you
Okay.
obviously have to be 18.
Yeah.
I think the voting age is 18. How
Mm.
did they get to that number? How did they get to that age?
What, the
I mean,
voting age?
yeah. Who decided that? I wonder if that's kind of like the standard throughout the world as
Oh, well,
well.
haven't you heard Keir
Or
Starmer's one of his things is that he's going to reduce the voting age to 16?
to 16. I was thinking that he should go the other way.
I agree. I was like 16. I didn't know shit at 16. Like, how would I be able to contribute to society?
Exactly. Exactly.
Even at 18. I mean, your priorities are to go out drinking and like
Yes,
I don't, I don't know.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we kind of now, actually, we exactly a month away from the elections in the UK.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is that starting to heat up and
Oh my
you
goodness, it's
see,
all they're
oh,
talking about on the news.
really?
I'm seeing the only signs I see, so it's not really big on like outdoor advertising here. But
Yeah,
the
yeah,
signs that I've seen driving around towns and things like that is Liberal Democrats everywhere. They put their stakes in the ground. Um, the general feeling is that uh, Rishi and the Conservatives have a plan. They have a plan. Like, stick with them. They have a plan.
yeah,
And Keir Starmer and Labour are just saying we're not them. Like, we'll do better than them. So those are the two options that you seem to have. And yeah, apparently that the UK has like a tradition of voting a new party in just to get an old party out, and not really anything to do
yeah,
with their mandates or
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And whatever they say now is exactly the same that was said in the previous election and the one before that and the
Mhm.
one before that and so
Mhm.
on. So I've always appreciated that about the Brits, that they didn't allow elections to become this absolute circus,
Yeah.
like the Americans, and to some extent or degree here in South Africa as well. I mean, I was looking at the number of election posters
Mhm.
that are on every possible.
Yeah. I saw one
Uh,
ANC one that was in Chinese in Rivonia.
correct, correct. Um, so billboards, I mean, it is phenomenal. So I was thinking to myself, the amount of money that was spent
Mhm.
on these elections, you know, it must run into billions.
Yeah.
And surely that money could have been spent a lot better.
Mhm.
So that's what I meant by I always appreciated that the Brits had kind of like, this is a short
Yeah.
cycle. It's not something that is kind of like, yes, we're voting in 2 years' time and
Mhm.
people start canvassing and doing all of these things and so on, short period of time. But now, like you say, it is, once it's announced, it then turns into that circus. But they're still not allowed. Are they allowed to advertise on television?
I
And
haven't
so
heard any ads on the radio or anything like that. And I've been driving
I don't
around a
think they
bit.
are.
I don't think so. But they
I
have
don't think
three
they are.
formal debates. The first one's on the 7th of
Okay.
June. So I'm going to
Okay.
be in New York. And then there's another two. They've all been doing their bus tours. So, and
Hmm.
Rishi got on the overnight train from somewhere, and they're doing their tours around the country and speaking to people, um,
Is that
answering their
after,
questions, and
did Rishi go on the overnight train after somebody called him out for knocking on doors in 30 million pound houses in the richest
I didn't
areas
see
of,
that.
of London,
Oh,
going
yeah,
street canvassing, it's so obviously staged. I
yeah,
mean, yeah. Anyway,
yeah. So they all have been on their
um,
bus tours lately and going around the
okay.
country, and they arrange kind of like meetups. I saw Keir Starmer was at some like science institute, answering questions about scientific developments and how he feels about them and things like that. So they seem
Okay.
to just go around and universities and things like that and give their story.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think it's I think that there's actually a limit on how much they are allowed to spend,
Mm-hmm.
the political parties,
Yeah.
which I find a lot better than this free for all and whoever
Yeah.
can get the most money available and buy the most TV
T-shirts.
time, t-shirts, t-shirts and that sort of thing, as in the South African case.
Mm.
Anyway, it's going to be an interesting. I, I, I'm cautiously optimistic about the potential new era that we are going in.
Mm-hmm.
I think the next week or so is going to be quite important in terms of um, getting everybody okay with the fact that the average population, don't really care about that. But it is important that these things are announced and structures put in place and so on, so that
Are you talking
the
about the
country can be
coalition
governed.
in South Africa
Yeah, the
specifically?
coalition,
Yeah.
and then kind of seeing exactly how this thing actually plays out. And then beyond the first few months, it's going to be a question of, okay, cool, can people actually work together while not agreeing about exactly the same policies?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's going to be interesting, and I hope that I hope that we manage to do that successfully.
Yeah. Hopefully, it is a good news story.
It is, yeah. I hope so. Anyway, the other thing that I saw that was quite interesting, and I would like it to be a good news story, but it can potentially be a bit of a dystopian tale, is that there's a company in Switzerland, I think. Yes, Switzerland. That made computer that works with brain tissue. So the significance of that is that the energy needed to run a human brain is a hell of a lot less than it is to run CPUs. Okay. So it's quite interesting. This company's been around for about 10 years that they've been working and pioneering this. They have increased the life of these organisms to about 100 days now. When they first started, I mean, these things would last for a couple of hours or a couple of days, but they're now at the point where these things actually last for about 100 days. Just quite interesting from an energy point of view, and from how do we make this more eco-friendly, less strain on the environment and on all of these things and so on. Obviously the dystopian side of this is, well, if you can build something from scratch like that, what can you do if you put some handcuffs on a few people and start tapping into their brains? That's quite scary.
Okay. I'm not sure I understand the science or what's possible there.
So I'm also a little bit sketchy on what the possibilities are, but it can compute. Like a normal computer can compute. So it's got those functions, but at a very, very very efficient in terms of energy use. So beyond that, I'm not sure kind of what sits behind it in terms of what was their motivation to actually start building these organisms. But again, for me, it's a question of there's an enormous amount of ingenuity still around in the world. And on all fronts, wonderful things are tried, experimented with, being built that we are not necessarily aware of, and whether we understand the full context of these things and so on. And that's one of the things that give me hope for humanity. It's not like we're sitting here just kind of feeling like, oh, we've reached the peak of our civilization and it's all downhill from here and so on. And that's what I find inspiring about stories like that.
There was another one on one of the websites about they're creating beach sand powered batteries. looking
Okay.
at the properties of beach sand and how it absorbs heat and all of this and creating batteries out of it or something. I didn't read the full story, so I can't give you much more than that. But it is, like you're saying, it's the fact that people are still discovering, creating, coming up with new ideas is very positive.
Yes, and you know, the we've spoken about the, is AI going to help or to hamper this? And I think it can do both of those
Mm-hmm.
things. But I think, especially for those who are industrious and creative, etc., it is going to be a massive help and could accelerate
Mm-hmm.
a whole bunch of these things that can take humanity, um, I don't know, forward in a way that we haven't seen since the advent of the internet, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
That's certainly what I'm hoping for.
Hopefully, good news to come.
Yes.
So I wanted to
In the
just
meantime,
quickly ask you if you
yes.
had thought about your questions. You'd been talking about you were trying to come up with a few questions.
Yeah. I've come up with one question so far, which I think is useful
Mm-hmm.
to put on my list. And that is, what can I speak up about today?
Can we ask you what today's answer was?
No,
Okay.
um, I didn't have something specifically to, but I do think that, because I've got that criteria of it must be able to do this regularly. Um, it must require some thinking, and it must inspire living.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought about this. I was kind of, you know, just looking at, again, what's happening around us in the world and so on. And I think there wasn't one specific thing that kind of triggered it for me, but it was like a couple of things. Obviously, the politics and the politicians and their shenanigans. It was this whole Fauci um, testimony where he goes, "Yeah, of course I made up the 6 feet social distancing thing." Yeah, yeah, it's like bullshit like that. Um, the How we know thoughts were suppressed or dissenters were kind of either outright banned, shadow banned, etc., etc. If you strayed from it just made me realize that there are so many things that we are, in my opinion, afraid to speak up about.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's also a little bit of just listening to John Galt's speech again
Yeah.
um, in the last couple of days, where, am I true to myself?
Mm.
So we kind of maybe all of these things coming together that said to me, think about what is it that you must speak up about today.
It's a good thought to end on.
I will think about it and I will find something to speak up about.
Thank you, Herman.
Thanks. Enjoy your trip.
Thank you.